my God. I can't hear you.
Hello, I'm so happy to once again welcome to this 5 minute Mental Health Awareness Month broadcast Miss Armina Dominique, who is a social worker and who also is a certified trauma specialist. Today, she's going to talk to us about trauma. Armina, it's very good to see you. Thank you for coming on the broadcast.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Really quick, just let us know what is trauma, and then what it looks like, and then we'll talk about what it is people do if they've experienced trauma.
Absolutely. So trauma is so loaded. It's a whole lot. I'm going to squeeze it in 5 to 10 minutes, but the takeaway should be that trauma is a mind-body reaction that occurs in response to events that involves a threat to one's physical or psychological security. So basically, the Greek word for trauma is wound, right? So what happens is we experience an event. It's an extraordinary event. It's not like your day-to-day things. It's an extraordinary event that we experience that rocks us and shakes us to our core.
Okay, so give us what trauma looks like. What are some of the warning signs, or what are some of the things we need to look out for, or how does someone know if they're even been traumatized or they're dealing with trauma?
Oh, that's a really good question. The symptoms are different depending on the individual. And also, trauma is very subjective. So depending on the individual, depending on the individual's way of coping in life is how they're going to be affected. So there are some physical signs of trauma. Easily scared or easily startled, hypervigilant, very constantly on guard. There's racing heartbeats, there's aches and pains, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, on edge or agitation. Sometimes you may have some muscle tension. The main one a lot of times is not being able to sleep. And if you do fall asleep, you're having nightmares, or you keep replaying this thing or this event over and over in your life or throughout your days.
So tell me, what is it that causes trauma?
Trauma is an event. It is something that happens to you. And, if we live on this earth long enough, we all will experience some major event that happens. I mean, look at COVID-19 right now. I could put that easily that we're in a trauma war zone right now, and we're fighting for our lives. And when we come out of this, the effect that it's going to have on many of us is going to be brutal. So trauma is a thing that happens to us that we just can't brush off our shoulders. We just can't shake.
And what we're seeing is, trauma oftentimes is tied to things that happened in our past.
Yeah.
We're now experiencing trauma in the present, and we're seeing people deal with these psychological dangers of the current trauma that they're in due to COVID-19. So,
Absolutely.
so say someone is afraid to seek help. What are the first steps that they should take in order to seek help for dealing with their trauma?
So I truly believe that we all don't like feeling the effects that comes from it, right? It's not a good feeling. It's not something that we really enjoy. The first step is talking to someone, even acknowledging, there's just something that isn't right. We may not know it's trauma. We may not know what the cause of the nightmares are, or the hypervigilant. We may not know the underlying cause of it. So my suggestion would be to talk to someone. The thing that I love about psychology and science and mental health is that it's not my gut feeling about what's going on with you, but there are so many different tests and tools and measurements and questions that we can ask. And based on how the questions are answered is how we come up with, it looks like you may be experiencing some form of trauma. I mean, we hear trauma often with PTSD, people who have gone to war, or people who have post-traumatic stress disorder. Trauma has been associated with that for a very long time. but think about, the people who you grew up with in your childhood, and you went to every school, elementary school, middle school, high school, and then you guys graduate and you go your separate ways. I run a trauma group, and I always tell the people in my group that the first sign of trauma is when the baby comes through the birth canal. That is very traumatic on an infant who was in the womb for 9 months, not being bothered. Now we're going to trouble the waters and we're going to bring you out. And that is a very traumatic experience for a baby. And that's why babies come out crying, because they're like, whoa, what is going on? What is happening? I'm not used to this. So the first thing to do is reach out to someone and let's get you assessed. Let's see what's going on with you. Maybe it's not trauma. It could be anxiety. It could be depression. It doesn't have to be trauma, but the first step is to figure out what's happening so that we can treat the cause of what's happening.
I mean, I want to thank you for joining us. Of
Yeah,
course, to talk to us about trauma. Of course, we all experience trauma. And so
absolutely.
we just want to thank you for raising awareness this Mental Health Month, which is May. And I just want to invite those of you who are joining us to join us again tomorrow, as we'll talk a little bit more about mental health during this May Mental Health Awareness Month. Have a good day.